much know most everybody here. So you know me, George, and then Wes, Andrew.
Hello.
Our assistant winemaker, Amanda's here. Our wine club manager. Vinny couldn't quite make it today. He was going to try, but he didn't make it. Here we are. Welcome to the third installment of these spring virtuals. It's finally is actually spring, I guess, so we can now say that. So one more to go. After this one is next is the dry Riesling, older vintages to go over. But today we got Pinot Noir. We got two not back-to-back years, 13 and 15, which are two interesting years we had here. For once again, back to 13. This would have been I wasn't here for that harvest, but I was first. This is the first vintage I worked with at Atwater. So always exciting to revisit that first year here. Now that I'm an old regular here. Welcome everybody. And just to hold up a glass and say thank you all for coming again, and looking forward to tasting through these couple wines. Cheers, everyone.
Cheers.
And once again, you guys are welcome to ask any questions while we're going, or if you'd like to in the chat. Wes is keeping a close eye on the chat.
I am.
For any questions you might have. Yeah, he's always keeping a close eye on that. It's fun that the weather's starting to change and seeing everything grow. If you come by the tasting room, you'll see a bunch of marigolds and things that are starting to come up out of the dried earth there around the tasting room. So that's fun to see. So all the change in the tasting room, everything's starting to get green up a little bit. Yeah, it's finally feeling we're crawling out of the winter season too. Yeah, especially when you come here, all the birds and everything start chirping away. So it's actually and it's still light outside. I actually had to put a cloth over my windows so I didn't get blinded for this thing. So that's nice. I'm not here. The last couple, it was pretty dark when I was sitting down here, and very dark when I left. So this is nice to still have some light for the evening here. So a cup starting off with our couple vintages here, 13. So going back to 13, I'm just going to give a little rundown of the vintage, and I'll bring up my little trusty slides here. Aha. And I think I have to share it all for you guys. So hold on just a second.
And make sure you keep those plants from typing on the keyboard there, George.
I know they're getting
encroaching.
They're just gonna if they start strangling me, you'll understand. Let's see. All right, I'm gonna share a screen here, and all right, can you all see that?
Almost, yes.
Okay.
Got it.
So there we go. Okay. Pinot Noir, likely originated Burgundy, France. Clusters are usually small and difficult to ripen evenly. Yeah. So as we often talk about with Pinot Noir, we're often sort of talking about it even at any other tasting. It seems like every tasting we somehow bring up Pinot Noir. When you're comparing it to other grapes, this is one of the most difficult for us to deal with. It's very rewarding in many years, but it is also the most difficult. So if on these really tough years, you'll also often hear us, crying or see us sulking somewhere about Pinot Noir. We've had a lot of good vintages, a couple tough vintages like 18 and 21, which we often try to forget. But it is a tough grape to grow. These tight, if you look at this cluster here in this picture, you'll see how tight they're packed. There's a smaller sort of compact cluster, and it is they're all packed in there. And you can often see you can see how if you get a bad year where it's like really humid and there's a lot of disease pressure, a little infection that starts in the center here will spread really quickly to these grapes. They're very thin-skinned, so they're easily sort of injured, which then would lead to difficulties with infections and spread of things like that if you have really high disease pressure, a lot of rain, humidity, insect infestations, things like that. These are just tough to work with if you're having a tough year. Years like 2020, as we talked about before, were amazing years. So you're going to see more like this, these sort of really clean, very, evenly ripened clusters from really great years here in the Finger Lakes. But when you have these really wet years, it can be a challenge. This is some of the first grapes, first reds that we're usually harvesting. They harvest a little earlier than the others. So we're usually kind of focused on these and often sort of obsessed with looking at them and keeping an eye on them, because once they start, once they are ripened, there's a very short window as they start ripening. There's just more chance for things to go wrong. So we want to harvest them at the most opportune time, when they're clean, when they're ripe. We don't always have a choice sometimes, if we know weather's coming and the grapes are in a good condition, we're going to harvest them earlier than leaving them to possibly have any problems. But the rewards are great. You get years like 2020, 19, which we have in the tasting room, the last couple bottles that in the tasting room now, 17. These were all really great vintages. So, those are the ones we always are sort of swooning over. And then things like 18, we're going to make more. We're just going to make rosé out of. We might not make a barrel aged red, because we're always trying to make sort of the best wine we can. If in a tough year, we're going to harvest them earlier for rosé and not put them through the difficulty of trying to get them through harvest of a really tough year. And that's fine with me because I love Pinot Rosés. So we got some common flavors there, as you guys all know. Atwaters can tend to have sort of some violet aromas, and definitely that sort of mushroomy cherry thing that we always seem to get in our wines also. We have had it since 2000, and I just updated this. We actually have 3.35 acres now. We planted another acre a couple years ago. So we should be seeing, right, Wes, this year, we should be seeing a little bit.
I think we'll be seeing some, we saw I think last year or 2021 was its third. No, it was its second year.
Second, yeah. So we should see a little bit.
And it grew really well. So we'll probably see some fruit for most likely rosé this upcoming harvest.
Good, yeah. So it's exciting. We have a lot more Pinot to obsess over and worry about, I guess.
George, when you say introduced to Atwater in 2000, does that mean that's the first time?
That's the first plant.
That's the first time it was available for sale.
That's the first planting.
First planting. Okay.
Yeah, we planted that, and I'll show you a map fast here. We planted in 2000. And I'll briefly show you here the map.
What was the first harvest of it, George? Planted in 2020, so 3 years later?
Yeah, probably about 3 years.
That's why I was asking, because our very first stop at Atwater was in July of 2003. Darlene and I were on our honeymoon in Finger Lakes, and we bought a bottle of Pinot Noir, and I'm wondering if it was a 2000 vintage.
No, I mean, we could have. So early on at Atwater, we were also buying grapes too. So not everything we would have gone during those days, especially reds, would have come from here. We were planting a lot of reds early on because the initial grapes here are mostly whites, a lot of hybrids. So if you would have gotten Pinot Noir I bet you there's a good chance it was from Sawmill Creek vineyards. So there were a lot of reds that I think Vinny and them had initially gotten from Sawmill Creek as they were planting more and more things. So I think, you know, over the years we've gotten some things from them. Pinot Gris early. Sort
Pinot
of
Gris from there were excellent.
Oh, we love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Pinot Gris. We got some out of Skinny Atlas, I think, at one time. I think in 15 and 13. So there were a couple of years we did get some. We bought in some from neighbors or friends of ours. And early on with reds, we did get some. I think Cab Sav and probably a couple of the other reds that we initially got were from Sawmill Creek. Yeah, we don't really go too far away for things like that. We have enough friends around the vineyard, around the lake that, you know, if we need something, you know, you call and find out if they have some to sell. So yeah, you could have gotten it. It might have been Sawmill Creek. And can you see the screen or the?
It looks kind of gray for me.
Okay, I think every time you have to redo this, you got to new share it. Let's see. Can you see that?
Yes,
yep.
now we can. Yep.
Okay, so there you go. Just a quick thing since we're looking at a different grape from last time, Pinot Noir. So this map is actually a bit outdated because we just planted things and changed things. So most of these grapes from these two vintages would have been coming from, if you look down on your screen, is where the buildings are and the tasting room down here at the bottom. And then you'll see these on your right, the N numbers. So N2 is a Pinot Noir block. And that was a 2000. So that's one of the early ones. And then we have N5, which is just below that going towards the lake. And that's the other, that was in 2000. So those are the first two blocks that were planted in 2000. So N5 and N7. So they're relatively close to the tasting room. And then the other one, which was planted later, I think it was 2007. If I
Probably
remember.
C2.
C2. So that one's down a little bit, going towards the lake even farther, before the pond there and in the middle. So you'll see that there. And it's not new anymore. That one's sort of the mid planting. So I think it was 2007. And then, which not on here now, but what's happened is this N4, which was a small Syrah block that didn't quite work out for us. That one is now Pinot Noir 2. So now we have N5, N4, N2, and this N1 is actually now Pinot Noir also. So we have a lot more extra Pinot Noir there. And then on top of that, the C2. So they're all relatively close to the tasting room there, except for the C2. We have some different clones. C2 has a couple different clones in it. And I think the new block of N4 has, I don't know, what do we got, 3 or so different clones in that new block?
Yeah, I think it's 2 or 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you
So
sorry, George, can you expand what you mean by clones in the same block? What does that mean?
What that means is, so they'll isolate different clones, being the different grape. How would you categorize a clone, Wes? It's it's sort of like different things of a plant. So you have one that might have a better resistance. One might have maybe sort of the clusters are a little looser. So that it's like breeding for anything else. If you find Pinot Noir that's got one plant has certain characteristics you want, you're going to take clippings from that and clone it. So propagate it. So over the years, growers will find something, an interesting plant that has got some different characteristics that make it good or better for growing somewhere, or has something about it that you want. So you're going to take clippings from that, propagate it. And if you plant more of it and it does well, you might want to start propagating and selling it. So those different propagations with different characteristics are given a name, so a clonal name. And then, you can buy different clones that might work better in your area, or they have different flavor characteristics. And by planting several in a block, you sort of add complexity to your growing. You can also isolate them into their own blocks, and then, you know, some might be better for rosé. I know we got a couple that are usually that might be better for rosé. A couple that might have better growing characteristics that might do better in an area that you're trying to plant in, things like that. So that would be a clone. So you'll actually ask for it, like, oh, I want clone 98, you know, for Riesling, or, you know, clone, you know, 255 or something like that. They all have, some of them have real names like Pomard, or, you know, but a lot of them have numbered clonal names. Does that answer your question?
It does. Then, of course, I've got the follow-on, which is, where did you get them? Do you guys grow these yourselves, or you just, you know, you buy them on Amazon and they ship them next?
Yeah, we get everything from Amazon. No, we don't grow them. They're actually grown at a nursery. A lot of them come from California, so we'll order them. Well, actually, you have to, of course, sometimes have to go a couple years in advance, because they'll have this custom order if you're looking for specific grapes that are not too common. You'll go a couple years, because what you end up getting is a 2-year, usually a 2-year grown plant. So it's the clone that's a clone bud that's grafted onto a rootstock, and you choose the rootstock. It's usually a regional thing or something specific that you're trying to encourage. That is grafted on a rootstock that you choose for your, like I said, for your area, and then they grow it to have a little roots on it. So it comes in basically these little sticks with some roots on it, and you plant those little sticks, and they turn into your vines. So yeah, we order them from California. There are some New York State nurseries, growers that we work with. So either, it really depends on what we're looking for. If it's something we can't get out here, then we'll order it in.
Yeah, thanks, George. That helps.
Yeah. Did you have anything to add to that, Wes? I'm sorry, I sort of cut you off.
No, it's fine. I think you explained the clones pretty well. I think they're just like very slight mutations of, you know, it's still Pinot Noir, but it's a little different than like the vine, you know, or a different vine of Pinot Noir. I kind of like to think of it like, you know, dogs come in many colors, or they have many color patterns, but it's still, you know, you can get in an American Akita with a, you know, black and white. You can also get an American Akita that's brown and white. It's still an American Akita, if that makes sense. It's just slightly different, I guess.
Yeah, humans have been good at, you know, propagating things we basically create things for our needs, dogs included. You know, everything came from a wolf, and you look at, of course, Amy there with one of our pugs, and that doesn't look much wolf-like there, but it's still still a dog, I guess. Pinot definitely is going to be a little less than that. So yeah, by getting these different clones, it sort of diversifies what we have in the vineyard, and you know, it's adds some complexity. We do have some that are mostly one thing or another. Some wineries will, you know, I know Boundary Breaks, they'll have Rieslings they even name them after the clones. That can be a thing in itself, that you're highlighting, you know, things like Riesling that have many clones. By just growing one clone and bottling that, you can highlight the difference between the clones also. Some might have different flavor characteristics. And it's kind of fun. It's sort of like having a single vineyard planting of, you know, where you have Riesling planted one place and Riesling planted another. It's just another complex thing that you can add to your sort of repertoire of, you know, not only single vineyard, but like, you know, single clonal Riesling too. So you can use all those things as single things, or use them in your blends to make more complex, more interesting wines. So it's just another sort of tool thing that we can use to help grow better grapes for our region, or make better wines in a style we're looking for. So any more questions on those? Those are all good questions, because we talk about these things all the time, but we don't often remember that not everybody knows what we're talking about. It's a lot of jargon, wine jargon. But the other interesting thing is the rootstocks. There are diseases and little critters that can affect roots, and a lot of the rootstocks out here are resistant to these kinds of things. And so you're not just planting Pinot Noir. You're not getting a clipping of Pinot Noir, rooting it, and planting it. You're actually grafting it onto another vine rootstock. All the characteristics and the plant itself comes off from that bud and is actually Pinot Noir. The rootstock might be a different vine altogether that has been engineered, grown to have characteristics for resistance to soil, nematodes, or some other insect or parasites. They also, depending on how much uptake of water or other things, whether you want the plants to be more vigorous or less vigorous, if you're trying to keep them small and put more energy into fruit, there's a lot of different things you can choose for in rootstocks too. We usually have just a couple we work with that work well out here, at least for what we do. But yep, just another one of those interesting things. Pinot Noir and Riesling are some of the ones that have a lot of clones. So you often talk about clones with Pinot Noir and Riesling. You might not talk about clones with Syrah as much, or like Cab Franc. We don't often go into many different clones with those. But when it comes to Pinot Noir and Riesling, you're often have lots of clones you're talking about or working with. So. And that's all the Pinot Noir on the farm currently. It's all up top, all the way down here. We're going to be planting some other things, but not Pinot Noir. So there's the farm. And I'm going to stop sharing this. Any other questions on the map or the farm here as we're... Okay. Okay, here we go. Back to the show. This is probably from 2020 because it looks...
Yeah, I was gonna say it looks
beautifully clean.
It looks too good to be any other vintage.
When these things are good, they're great, and they're really dark, pretty grapes. But you can see how tight these are. I mean, they're like these little compact clusters. Here we are, 2013. So yeah, it would start off pretty rainy in the spring, going to this really hot, humid summer. And yeah, I remember this triple digits. And then things dried out. And that's sort of one of these saving graces when you have this sort of tough, humid year. And then August, dry. August, that was great. So that helped dry things up. It helped us keep the grapes out a little longer, and sort of save the vintage from, if that stuff would have kept going, humid, wet through harvest, and especially with those high temperatures, it could have been a real disaster. But what you hope for is this is what happened. August came and relatively dry weather. And once again, I wasn't there for when they were harvesting, but from what I'm told and from what I see here, relatively thriving, spectacular summer and September. Stayed dry and sunny. Yeah, so when I came in the winter, and everything was in barrels and everything was in tanks. So I missed out on this vintage. I made some of my own vintage of stuff at home, but not any of this stuff here. There's Wes. I think, is this the picture you have with the two?
This is Pinot Gris. That is not Pinot Noir.
Yeah, okay. That wasn't that one that you had.
But that's a good example of mutations. The Pinot family is very volatile, I guess, genetically. So this was also on the same vine. So one half of the vine had Pinot Blanc or the white grapes, and the other had Pinot Gris, which is the darker gray grapes. It was on the same vine, so it's kind of cool to see. But the Pinot family is very genetically not stable, which is why there's a lot of clones of them. Why there's things like Pinot Gris, Pinot Blanc, Pinot Noir, and all that.
Yeah, this is a good picture to sort of show that sort of thing of clones and things. So yeah, I guess somebody saw, on a plant, one of them looked, light colored, and they said, "Uh-oh, what's this?" And they isolated it, and all of a sudden, in a little while, you have a new grape to grow, different color and other characteristics. That's a good example of it. So September, you can see we're relatively early in our harvest here, September 17th, 26th. And this one's a little interesting. We did blend in some Blaufränkisch into this. Blaufränkisch is similar to Pinot in that it doesn't really blend well with others in small amounts. We don't usually blend anything into Pinot. You don't usually blend anything into Blau unless you're making like our Cab Franc Blau blend. If you want just Blau, the Pinot is sort of delicate. You add much to it, and it's not going to taste like Pinot anymore. The same thing with Blaufränkisch. You add a lot into it, and it's not going to taste like Blaufränkisch anymore. But because of the delicate nature of them both and the sort of earthy sort of flavors that they have, a little bit can work. And you'll see, it's surprising that both these vintages have a little bit of Blaufränkisch. I don't think we've done that since, but 13 and 15 we did. We did some trials and it seemed to work. So the fermentation, these were all bin fermented, basically till dryness. These were about 8 days. I don't think we used any whole clusters, so this would have been destemmed grapes that were put in our big open top bins and fermented like that. We would have been manually pushing down the grapes through fermentation and stirring them for those 8 days. And then we would press them off. And then about 9 months in French oak. We talked about this before, the delicate nature of Pinot Noir, and we use the sort of more nuanced oak, which is French oak. It tends to be a little less aggressive. It's the least aggressive of all the oak barrels. We don't use any really new oak. We usually use either previous used barrels or barrels we've used for a long time. So we don't use a lot of new oak anyways, but even so, Pinot Noir is usually aged in French oak barrels for those reasons of sort of more nuanced, a little less aggressive wood flavors that come through in it.
George, would you use barrels that had been used for a different varietal before using them with the Pinot, or would you just use? Well, you have to use them with something else first, right?
Yeah, I mean, we usually get them already pre-used from like California, or if we get new ones, we have very few, and so they'll be part of a bigger blend as opposed to we're not just use. If you use a new barrel and you put wine, something like this into it, it's going to be so oak aggressive that it's probably not something you're going to bottle on its own. You're going to blend it into other barrels, so it'll get through the it'll add its flavors, but over a larger amount. So yeah, we don't often just use like barrels for like the French oak. We're not going to say we might. These worked for Pinot before. They're rinsed out and cleaned. I can't say that we're really dogmatic about using the exact same French barrels for Pinot. every year. It does not necessarily have to be in the same. They don't have to have the same varieties in the same barrels every year. I guess you can do that kind of stuff. We haven't found that really, they're clean barrels. They're not going to really bring much, from something before that was in them. I don't know, Wes, do you have anything to say about that?
No, I think they're cleaned out. I mean, really well, boiling hot water, basically. There's really no remnants of what was in there before. So no, I mean, the French, sure, some of the Pinot barrels have probably had Pinot in them in the past, because most of the French barrels go to Pinot Noir, but these days, especially this vintage, we have so many French barrels that they're going to get mixed together. And the impact is not going to be the end of the world if one had Cab Franc in it and the next year has Pinot in it, or vice versa.
Yeah.
Approximately how many barrels was the 2013 harvest?
Approximately how many barrels? Well, let's see, how many cases? And that's actually on your list here, on your little pamphlet.
Really?
Oh,
216.
I actually pulled out my power cord. Hold on just a second.
Oh, okay.
I was wondering, saying your power's
Sorry,
low.
didn't you make it a hard question, George?
I know.
No, it for the Pinot, there's probably about 9 barrels of Pinot for the 2013 vintage. So not a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I guess
sorry
that's
about
a lot. I guess that's a lot of Pinot for us. I mean, if you look at the 2015, it's down to 87 cases, which is about 3.5, 4 barrels. So
this seems to be the case.
9 barrels is actually kind of a lot of Pinot Noir for us.
This seems to be the case. Well, we were looking at, we only have 2 acres, and then by the time you make Pinot Rosé or anything else with it, you basically don't have much left.
That's true.
So going from 216 to 87, this is similar to like this 2020. We had like 250 cases, and this year we're going to have much less. So it seems to be the thing here. It sort of ebbs and tides on vintages. Sometimes, like say something like 18, we may not make any. It's going to go all rosé. So then all of it might be more. It might be, it's going to go in a tank. So you're going to have, we might have, 400 cases of rosé as opposed to, 200 cases of red versus, the other half rosé. So it really depends on the vintage for Pinot Noir for us. And like I said, we're going to have a tough year. Yeah, we're going to make less barrel aged, or we're going to put it all to rosé. That's sort of the, we've hit on this further for all you guys that come to all these things. That's sort of the thing with Pinot. When you grow it, there has to be sort of an understanding that you're gonna have lots of good years, but the years when you do have a bad year that's coming up, you sort of have to be able to say, we're just not going to make a barrel aged Pinot Noir. We're going to make rosé out of it instead, which is just fine. You can make a sparkling, harvest it earlier for sparkling. You can also harvest it earlier for rosé, and you can make great sparkling and great rosé, and sort of keep yourself from making a mediocre barrel aged. That's sort of our job, is to decide when we're going to do that. So we are not sort of dogmatic to say we have to have a Pinot Noir barrel aged every year, because we're always trying to make the best of what we have, and it wouldn't be right to do that, at least from my perspective, and has always sort of been the perspective here. Make the best wines, and if a year you can't make it, then you can't make it. We'll be really happy in another year when we have a better vintage, that we can have one that works best for that style of wine. Any questions on that stuff? No, we won't go to that right away. So yeah, I guess we should talk about tasting it. Hopefully everyone's been drinking it this whole time. Does anybody have any impressions? Wes, what do you think with this guy here, since you've had a little time with it already?
I have. I think this is pretty, not classic Atwater Pinot, but I mean, it's got the cherry, the cranberry. It definitely has some sort of soily mushroomy thing, especially on the nose and a little bit in the mouth, at least for me. It shows its age, I think, a little bit, but it's not past its. I think this is a fine time to be drinking it. I don't think this will last another, 5 years, but it's good.
I get the cherry.
Little cherry, yeah.
I definitely get cherry. That's the first thing that I get.
Yeah, there's it's definitely an older wine. You're getting a little bit of that sort of concentrated, almost a little bit of that.
But I think I agree with Wes. I've had a lot of vintages of Atwater Pinot Noir over the years, and this is kind of typical of them to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we were talking about that with Vinny. That's sort of earthy. Sometimes I think we get a little bit of that violet. This one's not really showing that. But at least earlier on, you get a little bit of those sort of floral characteristics that, it could be just that they don't show up in an older wine like this. But I don't know, some of those, I think 17 had a lot of that sort of floral characteristics. 19 had some of it. I always tend to find that little sort of, we sometimes get that floral thing going on, the little flowers in the nose. But yeah, this one's a little bit more of that sort of walnut oil. It's definitely getting a little age on it, but it's fun. Did anybody make the pairing recipe? No one had that much energy this time. This one, huh?
We did.
You did? Was it good?
Delicious.
Absolutely delicious.
Oh, good. There's a lot of ingredients in this one.
It is, but it's so worth it.
Okay, good.
Problem is, it said it serves 8 to 10. There's 2 of us.
We eat a
Well,
lot.
Is it 8 to 10?
We cut it in half. It's pretty
Okay.
easy to cut in half.
8
All
to
right,
10,
good.
yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess you can invite over some family, but then they drink all the wine, so maybe not.
Which we're not sharing.
Any other flavor or comments about this wine in general? All right. If something comes to you later, let me know. All right. So, are we ready to move on to the next one? I'll switch my bottles. Whoosh. All right. I did open these up a little early, about a half hour early, so I can let them open up in the glass.
We did the same.
You did the same, yeah. Any more with these reds, especially these older ones, I let them aerate a little bit. And this one smells completely different.
Tastes completely different too.
Yeah. It's very, oh boy, that's fun. Okay, here we go. 2015, so here we are. Coldest February on record. Yes, it was.
Yes,
It was awful. May through July was humid with torrential downpours. Yeah, that was quite a beginning of the year, weather-wise. Once again, not as awful as all the stuff we've gone through in 2020 and 2021, but weather-wise, 2015 was definitely a tough year. I think I had all my pipes froze at my house in Ithaca. Terrible things. But warm and sunny September, one of the best in recent memory, providing above average temperatures and dry conditions. So after a sort of tough beginning of the year, we ended it on a really high note, and everyone was very happy with the 15 vintages. And there again, sort of a little later in September, probably because of that nice dry year, this was harvested. So, well, just about the same time, I guess. We harvested a little bit earlier in 13, but really around the same time. So, and definitely like sort of Yeah, about the same harvest bricks too.
Yeah, all of the I mean the acid and the
Yeah,
pH
everything.
are almost identical.
Yeah, it's
I
like-
would like to note though, I think this has been a issue in the past. The residual sugar is not 1.7%.
That is no, there's something going. This was
yeah, we got to check that again. It might be
well, you know what this was?
0.17%.
It was 0.17. Like, yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I just wanna-
0.17. So that's
it's
not
definitely
correct.
not 1.7%.
Yeah, this was a translation from grams per liter to percentage, and whoever was typing these up back in
1.7
50.
grams per liter would be correct.
Yes.
1.7%.
So, yeah, there was some. Vinny would sometimes put it when he's doing his notes either in percentage or grams per liter, and there's a decimal change in both in changing that. And probably Denise, when she was typing it into the computer, got used to him putting it in one as
grams
one
per
way.
liter. Yeah.
And did that. So yeah, it is not 1.7%. This would be a little bit sweeter. But yeah, pretty much, I mean, almost the same. I mean, even the blend,
Yeah.
8%. It's a little bit more blau, but not much. Same. Looks like we used some American oak in these.
Yeah, I saw that.
These were probably very old American oak barrels. So the same reason, you're using a very old barrel. They're neutral. They're not really adding much. Pretty much the reason we're using French is because even initially they're very sort of low in how they affect the wine. And only 87 cases, so this was pretty small. Oh, and look, we got 90 points for this one. We tend to do pretty well in our scoring for Pinot Noir of all the grapes, which is funny because it's one of the toughest and one of the ones I find that Finger Lakes would be less, people would be less to grade for out here. We get quite a few 90s for the Pinot Noirs. So that's nice. And smelling it now, it smells very nice. It's all hand-picked, hand-sorted. And I don't believe, looking at the tech notes, I don't believe we used any, can't remember if we used any whole cluster or not. I'm gonna take a quick look at that.
This year, a bit more robust.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely, let's see here. Looking at this.
Switching again.
Can you see that, Wes?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so here is, these are the actual tech
Oh, yeah.
notes from 2015.
Yeah, you can see that. You can see the residual sugar change.
Oh yeah,
0.17.
that might be, yeah, that might be our fault in transcribing that one. 0.17, that's much better.
Yeah,
So hand-picked,
25%.
hand-sorted, fermented, 25% whole cluster. So we did do a good amount of whole cluster on this one. So that means if you've been to these before, we will sort through some very clean grapes and we'll put the whole cluster, stem and all, 25% into the bottom of the bin, and then we will pump over the destemmed grapes on top of them. What that adds is makes the fermentation slightly more dynamic. The stems have some tannins in them. They have some components that help stabilize color. The grapes themselves break down internally through like enzymatic action, so you get different flavors that are released over the fermentation. And then once we press those off, it then gets into the wine. Some of the residual sugar that's still there after we finish fermenting will also ferment in the barrel once we press them off. And so sort of adding these different components helps change the fermentation enough to add, just new, build the character of the wine, as opposed to just a homogeneous clear juice. You have all these extra components in there that are adding their own little flavors and textures.
And
So we'll often use that in
also
Pinot
say
Noir.
French oak, not American.
Yes,
Yeah, there's another typo.
we did some typos here. I guess we got to watch our typos.
I'm
You
glad
start
you
copying.
put that up because I was getting a flavor I couldn't describe, and then I read your tasting notes. Cherry cola. That's
Cherry cola. That is
Yeah.
often a flavor we get in some of these Pinot Noir. Often you get a little bit of cola in like Syrah. Cola is a term that's often used in some of these red wines. But cherry cola, yes, cherry cola. There's some of that violet that we talk about. So yeah. Cranberry. So we got some cherry cola. Anything else you guys are getting? It definitely smells more sort of earthy, and I like this guy here. It seems to have that mushroomy, earthy thing. The cherry, the cola. Raspberries, all the fun stuff.
Mhm.
Tastes pretty good too.
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, the tannins are really nice and smooth. Nothing really heavy on the tannins. Yeah, that's easy to drink. I think that's the one I'm taking home for the rest of the evening.
It's darker in the glass too.
It is, yeah. I failed to mention that earlier. The different the colors. It's just slightly different colors in the two of them. Different vintages here. Stop that. All right. I think we got some more fun pictures on the other thing, so I'm gonna go back to that. There I am in my masked days. So this we know what year this was, you know.
Oh yeah.
there's those
And the
beautiful
Pinot looks too good to be from any other.
yeah, those beautiful 2020 Pinots. I was probably crying looking at these. That's probably why I look a little sad there. Oh, there's Wes. That looks like
That's
Syrah.
21. Yeah, that's 21.
Yeah, those yellowy stems. Was that?
Yeah, that's
Additional wines. Oh, no, there's some more new tasting room pictures. Let's see. I don't think, I guess that's the only. Oh, there's the crew.
It's 21. Yeah,
21. I like Shannon there
of course. Yeah.
modeling for us. Yeah, very stylish. Vinny's always off in the background.
New bottle label.
Yeah, these guys. I know. I got the cleanest shirt. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about that.
I should have wore a more rugged shirt.
I was gonna say I'm the only one that looks like I've done any work. You and Chris. I look like garbage.
Talk about stylish. How about those boots?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
You gotta iron your shirts, Wes.
I probably wore that shirt for 5 days in a row. There's no way. I don't.
Yeah, harvest season. Is that how it's like good luck if you have to keep wearing your good luck shirt through all of harvest?
Yeah. Just till it falls apart.
Here's some more hand sorting. Vinny in his element here. Getting some samples. No, he's
No,
picking.
we're harvesting.
Oh, you're harvesting.
Pinot. I think this was for the cuvee.
Well, pretty. Gary has raised his hand. Yes, Gary?
Oh, Gary, I didn't see you here.
I
There you
didn't.
go,
I
Gary.
didn't raise my hand.
Oh,
I'm
you
sort of.
accidentally did.
I don't know why it happened. Must have been.
Pressing too many buttons, Gary.
We forgive you.
Yeah. I don't. I try to avoid pressing buttons, but.
So
That's
George, are those
why-
new glasses available in the tasting room to purchase?
What's that?
I said, are those new glasses available in the tasting room to purchase?
Yes, if you want new logo glasses. Get your new logo glasses here. We actually have some new sweatshirts and stuff we haven't quite been able to put out because there's been no room to put anything, but yeah.
Nice.
New logo
got-
glasses?
What's that? They're not full of anything, but you can get some empty glasses. Fill them.
I'm okay with that, but ours are the old logo. We need to get the new ones.
You gotta get a new logo. Yeah, of
agree.
course.
I agree.
Okay, any other questions while we are wrapping up here? Or wrapping up?
Wrapping
Like
up.
bugs.
George, we're wrapping
Yeah.
up.
George, when we were talking Cab Franc, you said
Yes.
55 degrees is a good temperature.
Yes.
Any differences tonight?
I tend to, this was down in the cellar. It was pretty cold down there. I tend to like them a little colder and let them warm up in the glass. Because by the time you put them in your glass to like aerate and stuff, they're going to warm up quick anyways. So I tend to like them a little bit cooler. Especially these more delicate bodied wines. They're gonna warm up a little, pretty fast.
What was the temperature?
I just can't do anything.
Like 55.
Same. Okay.
Yeah, I like I said, I tend to prefer these Finger Lakes reds or any cool climate red. These served a little cooler than a more heavier bodied desert climate red. I think you're always better. It seems like you're always sort of better served by having it cooler. Once again, once you pour it in a glass, it's going to warm up rather quickly depending on where you're at. So it's better to have it cooler, where when you put it in the glass, it starts warming up. That's when the aromatics start coming out. If it's already warm, it's sitting, when you pour it in the glass, it's already warm. You sort of lose a little bit there. I feel it's better to sort of let it warm up in the glass and sort of give off all of its beautiful aromas. So it doesn't hurt my feelings if it's a little too cold to when you pull it out of the cellar or you put it in the fridge a little too long to get it chilled a bit. It's going to warm up pretty fast. I think often we serve these, especially reds, way too warm. And things like Cab Franc from Finger Lakes, I'd rather have colder than warmer. For those reasons.
About the Blanc Frankish, same thing.
What's that?
The Blanc Frankish, the same.
Yeah, I think, like I said, any of these sort of Finger Lakes reds. I mean, the Cab Sav, you can. But once again, I always, by the time you get it out, open it up, pour it out, everyone sits down, you've already warmed it up a couple, some degrees. Anyways, so it's better that it's sort of getting to proper temperature than to be over, too over the temperature. Because once a wine is already warmed up, I think you lose a lot. You wouldn't necessarily want a Riesling warm, that same thing. You can tell when they're having wine served at proper temperature is important. And once it's warm, it's warm. Like I said, I'd rather serve even Rieslings. If keeping it really cold, and by the time you bring it out, open it up, it's going to warm up to the more proper temperature. That's the challenge in the tasting room too. Especially in summer, that was always an issue back in the day with a lot of wines where we would have them, you'd have them out on the counter and you're pouring a lot of wine. Well, they start getting warmed up because you're just bringing them in and out of coolers. That's why you see those new machines we have. What's nice about those, it's always at temperature. So when you pour them, those little things keep the wine at temperature. When you keep moving things in and out, they never get a chance to keep cold enough. and that can be a challenge in the tasting room when you're pouring lots of wine, is keeping the wine at a proper temperature so it can be enjoyed properly. You're also pouring small samples. Same thing. They're in smaller samples. They're going to warm much quicker than a large glass of full glass of wine. So that's always something we have to keep an eye on when we're pouring wines in the taste room too, because it does affect the wine a lot. And because of what you try to pour out these lots of wine, you can't forget about that if you're not careful. And that's I do like those mechanical machine things, because it not only does it keep air from getting in them, but it also serves them at a proper temperature for every glass you pour out of those things. So yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions?
I did take your advice, as you were just saying, George, this time. We had these in our basement, which is about 58. And then we brought them up, opened them, poured a glass, let it sit for a little bit. They were pretty good that way. Yeah.
Like I said, we always seem to find that just seems to work. If you can get all crazy as you want with temperature, but once again, cooler is always sort of better. Well, thank you guys. I really appreciate y'all coming to this one. Again, we still got one more, at least before summer.
That's the one I'm supposed to remind you that we have two different. Remember, I got a double of that one because we got 6 people.
You're going to be the guy that teaches us about bottle variation on aged wines. So that's another reason to come to the next one, because there'll be something cool that Paul's going to show us. But yeah, I hope to see you guys all coming into the tasting room now. We got a lot going on. New floors. It looks like wet slate. We got a new kitchen coming in, hopefully, if we can get it done before summer. And all kinds of new tables and all kinds of new changes. So it's fun to have everybody come and see all that. And I'm looking forward to finishing it, because I'm tired of being stressed out by half-finished projects. And
extra days closed, right?
Yeah, it'll only be 2 days. Yeah, 2 weeks later, you're like, oh gosh, I got to open the tasting room. Yeah, so I'll be happy when these big projects are done, at least for this summer season. There's still some outside stuff we got to do too. So there's a lot going on. So it'll be fun to.
It looks great.
Good. Yeah, I hope so. It's definitely much brighter in there now and more open, and it feels really nice. Going down there, when we're closed and doing some work, sometimes we'll go down there and have a meeting, or just go sit down there and do something like a wine tasting, a trial or something. And it's just so different in there now, and so inviting. The view was always inviting, but the tasting room feels so open and so much more bright that it's really fun to go down there now and sort of hang out. So thank you all so much. Thank you all so much. And we'll see you guys soon.
Thanks for doing these. See you next month.
Good night.
We'll see you soon. Yeah. Well, there's one more for club members. We got another club one next week.
Next Thursday.
Next Thursday.
Yes.
So if you got your club wine. Yeah. So the club wines will be going over next Thursday. So club members, you don't have to have those wines in your shipment. You can talk. We'll talk about any wines you have. I think there's a sort of thing.
It's late to sign up.
No, you could just go right out there and sign up. Even if you didn't get the club ones in the club shipment, we'll talk about any wines from.
We got the shipment, but we substituted a couple things.
Doesn't matter. We need to make that more clear, because I think people go, oh, if we don't have the club ones, then we can't come. Anyone can come, and you can just tell us what you're tasting or had any questions on the wines that you got.
There you go. That works.
There.
Do you need the link, Paul, to sign up?
Yeah. Can you, Amanda?
Yeah, I'll send it to you tomorrow.
Yeah, I probably deleted that. I'm sure I had it, but I might have deleted it. So
that's fine.
Please, Amanda, thank you.
Yep. And I just want to mention that Brett gets a gold star tonight. His wife Katie is out of town for business and wanted to participate with us, but she didn't have the wine. So he
But you can't
surprised
bring
her
it in a
by,
carry-on.
couldn't bring it in the carry-on. So he surprised her and sent wine to the bar at her hotel. So when she went down to grab a glass of wine for tonight, they had the Atwater wine waiting for her.
Aw.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
It
Wow.
was super cool.
Yeah.
So
Jeez,
Very good
Brett.
job, Brett.
Way to go, Brett.
Dude.
Making us all look bad. Yeah.
I'm like, wow, you guys get Atwater wine. I was super excited. They're like, no, but this is for you. And I was like, rock
Oh,
on.
that's awesome.
Yeah, it was really cool.
That's great. Well, that's good that you were able. I know you were talking about you couldn't make it that's good. Awesome.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you
was
so
worried I
much.
was gonna have to drink, other wine and pretend I was drinking Atwater wine tonight. But thanks to my husband, I don't have to worry about that.
Wow.
Oh, dang. Well, thank you guys. We will see you, probably most of you, in another week. So,
All right,
If you-
we'll see ya.
If you want the link to, to
Right,
next
thanks.
week event, it's on our website on the calendar. So you can get to it through the front page. It's just the second event, the club exclusive, and the link to sign up is there. So if you're really excited about signing up and don't want to wait for Amanda's email tomorrow, you can get to it that way.
Thanks, Amy.
Yep.
Thanks, Amy.
see you guys.
Always
See you, Rob.
plans.
Bye.
Nortographs. Yeah.